August 1984 brings us to issue 7 of Crash, and the very last time that it would be priced at 75 pence. The cover shows a gamer playing with their Spectrum on a beach on the surface of an alien moon, with a beach umbrella giving it that summer vibe. Let's find out what the top 10 games in this issue were. In 10th place, we have Beaky and the Egg Snatchers, released by Fantasy Software and written by Bob Hamilton, author of The Pyramid and Doomsday Castle from issue 2. In this game, you take the role of Beaky, an Andromedan armed condor. On the first level, you have to rescue your eggs from some creatures that are attempting to snatch them. On the next level, you have to hatch your eggs, and on the level after, feed your chicks. Crash found that the game was fairly boring to start with, but gradually grows on you. They felt there was a lot going on, but all reviewers found Beaky hard to control. They rated it as above average and gave it 75%. This is a bit disappointing after Bob Hamilton's previous 2 games. Beaky is just too fiddly to control. The animation is reasonable, although the eggs are sometimes flickery, but overall I just don't find the game to be fun. At 9th place is New Venture, written by David Holden and published by Falcon Software. This is a text-based strategy game, in which you have to start your own retail shop, select stock, decide how to advertise, and then make money. Crash found it to be sophisticated, as strategy finance games go, and, whilst not flashy, was user-friendly and absorbing, free of the random elements that sometimes lower the addictive qualities of these type of games. They gave this 78%. This is just a bad idea for a game. It seems to have all the headache of actually running a retail shop without making any money out of it. The presentation is awful, it looks like a basic type-in game. Just one to avoid. At 8th place is TLL from Vortex. This was written by Costa Panyai, the author of Android 2, reviewed in issue 2. In TLL, or to give it its full title, Torndao Low Level, you fly a tornado jet. You take off from your runway and have to fly at low level over a number of ground targets, then returning to land your plane before the fuel runs out. Crash found this to be a worthy successor to Android 2, although not as arcade exciting as the earlier game. They liked the 3D effect of the graphics and the way in which shadows gave the buildings a sense of depth. Their only criticism was a lack of content with no antagonist to speak of. They gave it an overall score of 81%. This is similar in graphical style to Vortex's earlier game Android 2, but very different in gameplay. I owned this game on original release and loved it, spending many hours playing it. Even returning to it now I find it incredibly enjoyable. A game that I think should have been a Crash smash and one I certainly recommend. In 7th place is 3D Tank Duel from Real Time Games. This was written by Ian Oliver, Andrew Onions and Graham Baird. 3D Tank Duel was based on the Battlezone games popular at the time, and uses wireframe models to represent enemy tanks and other scenery. You have to destroy other tanks before they destroy you. Crash compared this favourably to other Battlezone clones available for the Spectrum at the time. They found it fast in comparison to others, and liked the 3D effects of the enemy tank's component parts flying towards you when it is destroyed. They found it very addictive, and gave it a score of 83%. This was a game that I'd played back in the 1980s when it was released on the Softrade compilation. Not a game that stayed with me particularly, although I recognised it when I played it again. Not a bad little game, although the vector graphics representing the tanks seem primitive now, and the clicky sound is rather annoying. Good for a couple of goes, but probably won't have lasting appeal. At 6th place we have Rapscallion, released by Bugbite and written by Albert Ball. In this game you're a king, whose crown and castle has been seized by Rapscallion the Rogue. You explore a series of screens forming a labyrinth, ultimately trying to find and defeat Rapscallion. Crash described this as an exploring and adventure game with varied locations, although they did describe the graphics as blocky and chunky and compared them to the teletext pages that you got on British televisions at the time. They found it playable, although were unsure whether to be impressed or disappointed with the graphics. They gave it a final rating of 85%. This is a game that hasn't dated well at all. There are some interesting ideas, although the ability to turn into a bird may have been inspired by Alchemist from issue 2. Each screen is unique, sometimes to the point of just being thematically jarring. It's not particularly enthralling in terms of gameplay, and is very blocky and jerky. Not a game I'd bother with these days. In 5th place is Cavelon, written by Paul Owens, Christian Urquhart and David Thorpe. This was released by Ocean. This game is based on the legends of King Arthur. You play the role of a gallant knight whose mission is to rescue Guinevere from the top floor of a tower. One Crash reviewer felt that this was a game you would either like or dislike. Another felt that the Spectrum version looked better than the Commodore 64 version, and was tougher and more addictive. They found it to be a simple idea, but addictive and playable, giving it a rating of 86%. To me, this is a fairly average maze game. The animation is done well and is smooth, but the way in which the music stops as the screen scrolls is disappointing. It seems a very tough game. The corridors of the maze are so narrow, it's tricky to avoid your antagonists. Better than some games, but not one I'd go out of my way to play. Two games are tied for third place. The first is Kosmic Kanga, published by Micromania and written by Dominic Wood. In this game you take the role of the Cosmic Kanga of the title, and you have to bounce your way back home to your base on the moon. Crash loved the small details in Cosmic Kanga, such as the pre-screen which tells you what to collect and what to avoid. They liked the originality and the colourful and smooth graphics, but they generally found the bouncing required practice to properly get the hang of. They gave this game 88% and a Crash smash. This is an interesting variant on the linear scrolling games that were popular on the Spectrum. The challenge here is controlling your kangaroo, who does not just walk but bounces. Positioning yourself so that your bounce lands accurately is key. Although it seemed like quite a simplistic game, the graphics are smooth and it's quite good fun to play. Worth trying out. Also in third place is Automania from Microgen, written by Chris Hinsley. This is the first game in a series of games starring Wally Week. Here, you play the role of a mechanic in a car production factory. You have to construct cars by collecting the pieces from a warehouse and assembling the car on top of a platform. Crash praised the large and colourful graphics and loved the animation of Wally and the detailed touches like the way he will look around at you. They found it a well-paced game of high entertainment value and felt that it was the best game that Microgen had produced up to that point. They gave it a score of 88% and a Crash smash. In my opinion, this is an utterly fantastic game. Admittedly, it does seem to have a bit more of a lumbering pace than games like Manic Miner, but it is so incredibly addictive. I played this first in December 1985 and have returned to it many times over the last 40 years and still play it to this day. In second place, from the author of 3D Death Chase, Mervyn Escort, comes Full Throttle, released by Micromega. This is a motorbike racing game, where you pit yourself against 39 other riders on various tracks from around the world. One Crash reviewer described this as an entirely new breakthrough in 3D road racing games for the Spectrum. They enjoyed the detail of how the bike responded to your speed and found it very realistic. They expressed some disappointment on the lack of any colour variety, although understood that this helped avoid the Spectrum's colour clash. They gave this a Crash smash and a score of 91%. Compared to Checkered Flag from issue 3, this game feels a lot more fast-paced and exciting. The mountains in the distance are a nice touch. Still, there's not a great deal of character differentiating the tracks. It's a shame the opponent bikes flicker so much, and that the game uses the default Spectrum character set on the menus. A reasonable game for the time, but there were better racing games later in the Spectrum's life. Finally, in first place we have The Lords of Midnight from Beyond Software, written by Mike Singleton. Although reviewed in Crash's Adventure Trail column, this is actually more of a strategy game, although one played in a first-person perspective. You control Luxor the Moon Prince and 3 other characters at the start of the game, and have to gather armies and position them well to do battle with your evil adversary, Doomdark. Derek Brewster, reviewing for Crash, recognised the immense complexity of the game, and praised the lavish booklet that came with it, and the wonderfully coherent storyline that underpins the game. He described the graphics as stunning, and was impressed by the way distant things in the landscape get bigger as you approach. Being reviewed in Adventure Trail, this wasn't given a percentage at the time, although it was awarded a Crash smash. Converting the scores given to a percentage gives an equivalent of 95%. Despite knowing of this game by its reputation, I'd not played it before now. It's a game with so much depth that I don't feel that the brief time I've spent with it is enough to make any sensible comment. It feels quick and responsive and graphically is of a unique style. A game that will need a lot more time to really get beneath the surface of it, but undoubtedly is deserving of its classic status. If you have enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to see more videos about retro games from Norlogic Retro.